A billionaire who had everything except the one thing that mattered most, his daughter's voice. She had never spoken a word. Doctors had failed, therapists had given up. But then a simple maid entered their lives, with nothing but a kind heart and a love for music. What happened next? No one could have seen it coming. Mr. Grant's mansion stood tall at the edge of the city, hidden behind iron gates and trimmed hedges. It looked perfect from the outside, polished marble steps, spotless glass windows, and golden lights glowing in every room. But inside, it was quiet, too quiet. Not the kind of silence people enjoy, but the kind that wraps around your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Mr. Grant, a man with more money than time, moved through his home like a shadow. Every day he returned late, his suit perfect, his tie tight, and his face without emotion. He never smiled. He had built his empire from the ground up. Banks, hotels, real estate, everything. People feared him, admired him, and whispered his name with respect. But no amount of wealth could change the one thing that haunted him most: his daughter, Emily. Emily was 8 years old. She had never spoken a single word in her life. Not a laugh, not a cry, not even a sound. Doctors had examined her endlessly. Therapists came and went. Some blamed trauma. Others said she was just born that way. Her mother, Sarah, had passed away when Emily was a baby, and after that, the silence became permanent. Mr. Grant paid for every treatment available, flew in specialists from across the world. Still, nothing. Emily would sit by the window every day, holding a small stuffed rabbit her mother had left behind. She did not play. She did not react. Her eyes followed the trees, the wind, and the birds, but there was no spark in them, only stillness. Then came Maria. Maria arrived on a gray Monday morning. She wore simple clothes, carried an old brown bag, and smiled gently as the butler opened the door. She was not like the other maids. She hummed softly as she worked, spoke kindly to everyone, and moved through the halls like she belonged there. She was hired to clean, nothing more. But from the first day, Maria noticed Emily, not just the silence, but how the girl watched her. When Maria dusted the piano, Emily's eyes followed her fingers. When she hummed a soft Spanish lullaby in the hallway, she noticed Emily's head slightly turned toward the sound. It was small, but Maria caught it. Most staff avoided Emily. They pitied her, or worse, ignored her. Mr. Grant had made it clear: do your job and leave the child alone. But Maria did not see Emily as broken. She saw a little girl frozen in a silent world, waiting for someone to notice her. Maria never spoke directly to her. Instead, she let her presence do the talking. She would hum while folding sheets, whistle while polishing the floors, and sometimes let her voice drift through soft melodies. And always, from the corner of her eye, she saw Emily listening. One afternoon, as Maria cleaned the hallway near Emily's room, she sang a slow tune, soft like a whisper, wrapped in a dream. Emily sat by the window, unmoving, but her grip on the stuffed rabbit loosened slightly. Maria paused. She lowered her voice and sang slower, almost like telling a secret. Emily blinked. Her lips parted for a second, but no sound came. Maria smiled to herself and continued working, saying nothing. Days turned into weeks. Maria became part of the house. The other staff liked her, even if they could not understand why she talked to furniture or sang to empty rooms. Mr. Grant barely noticed her. She was just another employee, one of many. But Maria's focus was never on him. Every morning, she would sweep near the staircase where Emily sat, and every time, she sang. She brought no instruments, no loud gestures, just her voice. It was not perfect, but it was real. Emily's eyes slowly started following her, not just the sound. Maria would offer a small wave. Emily never responded, but she watched. One morning, Maria sat near the end of the hallway, pretending to fix a broken vase. She began to hum an old song her grandmother used to sing. Her voice cracked slightly at the chorus, so she stopped. Then something unexpected happened. Emily reached for her rabbit and pulled it closer to her chest. It was not much, but for Maria, it was everything. Maria returned to her room that night and wrote something in a worn-out notebook. She hears me. The next day, she brought a scarf. A simple red scarf, nothing fancy. She wrapped it around her neck and, while cleaning near Emily, sang quietly. Then she gently took Emily's hand and placed it on her throat. Emily blinked, confused, but did not pull away. Maria kept singing, software warm, like a secret between two people. Emily felt the vibrations. Her fingers pressed slightly harder. Maria smiled. She stopped singing, removed Emily's hand, and stood up. Emily stared at her for a long time. Then slowly, her lips moved. No sound came out, but they moved. It was the first time she had ever done that in front of anyone. Maria did not cry. She just whispered, "Tomorrow," and walked away. That night, Emily did not sit by the window. She sat on her bed, clutching the red scarf Maria had left behind. And for the first time in the mansion's long, cold silence, something had changed. The silence was still there, but it was not empty anymore. It was waiting for what would come next. Maria started waking up earlier than usual. Before the rest of the staff even began their day, she would quietly make her way to the east wing, where Emily's room overlooked the garden. It had become their silent meeting spot. Not officially, but both of them knew. There were no words exchanged, no promises made, just a quiet agreement, felt through shared glances and the soft energy between them. Emily would already be awake, sitting with her stuffed rabbit. When Maria entered, she did not greet her with words, just a smile and a melody. The songs were different each day, sometimes playful, sometimes soft and sad, but always simple. Maria never brought music sheets or instruments, only her voice. She noticed how Emily listened closely to the patterns, the rises and falls. Over time, Emily began to move her lips more, not just opening and closing, but forming shapes as if copying Maria. One quiet afternoon, Maria placed a small Bluetooth speaker on the floor and played a gentle piano tune. She motioned for Emily to sit beside her. Without hesitation, Emily walked over and sat down. Maria sang along with the music, then gently guided Emily's fingers back to her throat again. She sang slowly, making sure Emily could feel every vibration, every pulse of sound. Emily's lips began to twitch, not in speech, but like she was trying to mirror the shape of the notes. Then she placed her hand on her own throat. Maria froze. Emily looked at her, eyebrows lifted in question, almost asking, "Am I doing this right?" Maria held back tears and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. Just like that. From that day, the routine changed. Maria started teaching Emily with hand signs and movements. Not sign language, but simple gestures. Lift here, lower there, hold breath, release. And Emily responded. She watched, learned, and mimicked. Her expressions became livelier. Her eyes, once dull and far away, now sparkled with curiosity. They began using humming as a form of communication. Maria would hum a question, 2 rising notes. Emily would hum a soft reply, 1 long note, sometimes shaky, sometimes off-pitch. But it was sound. It was something. And more than that, it was hers. They kept their secret carefully guarded. Mr. Grant still knew nothing. He left early, returned late, and barely glanced in Emily's direction. To him, she was still the same silent child, and Maria was just another face in the hallway. But the house was changing. The silence was no longer heavy. It was delicate, filled with unseen music between walls and whispers in corners. One rainy day, Maria brought a string of small bells tied together with a red ribbon. She placed them on the floor, then lightly tapped one. The sound was soft, bright. Emily reached out and touched the next one. It rang. Clumsily, but it rang. Her eyes widened. Maria showed her how to tap them gently, in rhythm. They made a game of it. Sing a note, ring a bell. Emily laughed. It was not out loud, not a sound anyone could hear, but her face said everything. Her mouth opened wide, and her chest moved with breath. A full smile, the kind that warmed Maria's chest like sunlight. Over the next few days, Emily began experimenting. She would hum alone, quietly, testing her voice when she thought no one was around. Maria would sometimes listen from behind the door, tears in her eyes. Each note, however imperfect, was a victory. Each vibration was a wall breaking down. One evening, Emily reached out and touched Maria's hand. She pointed at the piano. Maria looked around. No one was nearby. She nodded and walked over. She played a few soft notes, an old lullaby, the one she had sung the first week they met. Emily stood close and began humming along. Her pitch wavered, but she followed. Her hand gripped the edge of the piano for balance, her body slightly swaying. Then she stopped and looked up. She tried to say something. Her lips moved slowly, 3 syllables. Maria leaned in, watching closely. Emily mouthed the words again. Thank you. No sound. But the message was clear. Maria could not speak. She only reached forward and gently hugged her. From the shadows of the hallway, the butler paused, watching quietly, holding a tray that now shook slightly in his hand. He did not interrupt. He simply turned and walked away. But the secret was no longer completely theirs. The silence had been broken. Something had begun, and it would not stay hidden much longer. Mr. Grant came home earlier than usual. A sudden rainstorm had ruined a meeting at the golf club, and the rest of his day fell apart in a series of delayed calls and silent drives. He hated coming home before dark. The mansion, though grand and filled with every comfort, always felt a bit too big, a bit too hollow when sunlight still touched the windows. He stepped inside, loosened his tie, and handed his coat to the butler. The silence greeted him like it always did. No laughter, no footsteps running through the halls. Just quiet, like always. But something felt different. Faintly, from the east wing, came a sound, barely audible, like wind through trees, but steadier, softer, familiar somehow. He paused in the hallway. Was that humming? He followed the sound slowly, not making a noise. His expensive shoes patted silently on the marble floor as he approached the music room, his late wife's favorite space. No one had entered that room freely in years. He turned the corner and stopped. The door was slightly open. Inside, Maria was sitting by the old upright piano, her back to the door. Her fingers played gently on the keys. And beside her stood Emily. She was not sitting. She was standing tall, hands resting on the piano's surface. Her eyes were closed, and she was humming. It was off-key, uneven, fragile, but it was humming. Mr. Grant gripped the edge of the wall. His breath caught in his throat. He had not heard a single sound from his daughter since the day she was born. Not a cry, not a word, not even a laugh. But now, here she was, standing with that maid, singing. His vision blurred. His chest tightened. He wanted to step in, to speak, to ask what was happening. But he could not move. Inside the room, Maria continued playing. Her voice gently joined Emily's, guiding her like a soft river current. She sang low and slow, letting Emily follow her flow, never pushing too hard. The room felt warm with emotion, thick, like the air had weight. Then Emily opened her eyes. She turned slightly, and for a second, she looked toward the door. Her humming stopped. Maria noticed the shift in her gaze and turned her head. She saw Mr. Grant standing there, silent, unmoving. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Grant stepped inside. Emily's eyes darted away. Her hands dropped to her sides. Maria stood slowly, unsure of what would come next. He looked at his daughter, then at Maria. His voice came out hoarse. "How long has this been happening?" Maria swallowed. She stepped in front of Emily slightly, as if shielding her. "Not long," she said. "Just a few weeks." He looked back at Emily, who now stared at the floor, her body stiff with fear. "Emily," he said softly. She did not respond, but her lips parted slightly. Her breath moved. A sound escaped, a quiet hum, broken and shy, but still there. Mr. Grant took a shaky breath and turned to Maria. "What did you do?" he asked. Maria looked him in the eyes. "I did not heal her. I just listened to her." His expression hardened. Therapists, specialists, all of them said it was hopeless. "They treated her like a problem to solve," Maria replied calmly. "But she is not broken. She just needed something real." He sat down on the nearest chair, suddenly looking much older than his 52 years. "I used to sing to her," he whispered, "when she was a baby. My wife, she loved music. Said Emily would sing someday just like her." Maria nodded slowly. She remembered. Tears slid down Mr. Grant's face. He did not wipe them. He looked up at his daughter, still standing quietly beside the piano, holding the edge with tiny hands. "Emily," he said again, "do you remember your mother's song?" Maria stepped aside and placed her hand gently on Emily's back. The little girl closed her eyes. She hummed again, one note, then two, then the melody. It was the same lullaby, broken, software, but unmistakable. Mr. Grant covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking silently. Maria gently led Emily forward. "She is not afraid anymore," Maria said. "She is learning how to be heard." He stood up and looked at both of them. "I do not know what this means," he said, "but whatever it is, do not stop." Maria nodded. "We will not." He turned to leave the room, but paused in the doorway. "Build her something," he said, "a place where she can do this, every day." Then he left, and for the first time in years, the mansion did not feel silent. It felt alive. The next morning, workers arrived early. No one asked questions. They simply followed orders. Within a week, one of the unused wings of the mansion was transformed. Thick velvet panels, warm wooden floors, soundproof walls, and in the center, a grand piano. Not new, but old. The one his wife used to play. Mr. Grant had it brought down from storage, cleaned and tuned until it sounded like the memories he once buried. Maria stood beside him as he looked through the glass window into the new studio. "She will like it," she said quietly. Mr. Grant nodded. "She better," he whispered, half smiling. "It cost more than my wedding." Emily began visiting the room daily, no longer hiding in the shadows. She would sit beside Maria on the bench, watch her hands, and place her small fingers beside them. Her humming grew steadier. Sometimes she got frustrated. Sometimes she just sat and listened. But each day she came back. Mr. Grant did not intrude. He watched from afar, always listening, always waiting. Then one afternoon, as winter pressed in and the mansion's halls grew colder, Emily did something no one expected. She pulled Maria's hand toward the old bookshelf. A dusty record player sat on the shelf, untouched for years. Maria hesitated. "You want this?" Emily nodded. Maria brushed off the dust and carefully placed a record on the turntable, one of Mrs. Grant's old favorites. The soft crackle of the needle filled the room, and then music poured out. Warm, old-fashioned, comforting. Emily leaned into it, eyes closed, breathing steady. When the chorus came, she opened her mouth and mimicked the shape of the words. No sound, but the motion was there, the intention. Maria watched closely. "Say it," she whispered. Emily shook her head. "Try," Maria encouraged. "You do not need to be perfect." The little girl touched her own throat gently. She took a breath. Then she whispered a sound. It barely existed, like the wind brushing across the top of a bottle. But it was there. Maria knelt beside her. Again. Emily tried. This time it came out a little clearer. A small note. Not a word yet, but not silence either. For weeks the two of them continued. No pressure, no heavy expectations, just rhythm, breath, and warmth. Then came the gathering. A rare family event. Mr. Grant's older brother had flown in from New York. A few business partners and their wives, their kids running through the hallways. The house was alive with voices, silverware clinking, champagne bottles popping. Mr. Grant had not told anyone what had changed. He did not want to explain something he himself could barely believe. After dinner, the crowd gathered near the fireplace. A woman joked about how quiet the mansion always was. Someone else teased, "Does your daughter ever speak, Grant?" He smiled politely, but his eyes shifted to the staircase, where Emily stood, holding Maria's hand. The room grew quiet as people noticed her. She took a few steps down. Maria followed. Mr. Grant stood up slowly, unsure if he should stop her or let whatever was happening happen. Emily walked to the center of the room. She looked small, dressed in white. Her fingers gripped Maria's gently. No one said a word. Maria knelt beside her and whispered something. Then she stepped back. Emily turned toward her father. Her lips moved. Nothing came out at first. She closed her eyes. Then, like a ripple on still water, it came. Daddy. The room froze. One word, just one, but it cut through the air like thunder, a soft, trembling sound, unsteady, unsure, and full of heart. Mr. Grant's knees almost gave out. He walked toward her slowly, tears forming instantly. Emily looked up at him again. Daddy, she whispered. Then her hands wrapped around his waist, her head against his chest. He knelt down and held her tightly, unable to speak. Around them, no one clapped, no one moved. Some wiped tears. Others just stared, stunned. It was not just a word. It was the beginning, a crack in the shell, a window opening after years of darkness. Maria stood in the corner, watching. She did not need to say anything. She had already done everything. The silence that once filled the mansion had finally been broken, and it was the most beautiful sound anyone had ever heard. The next few days moved like a quiet storm. Everyone in the house still walked softer, as if the echo of Emily's voice might vanish if they stepped too hard. But it did not vanish. It stayed. Like a melody stuck in memory, it lingered in every corner of the mansion. Mr. Grant made a decision the very next morning. He called Maria into his study, not the way he did with former staff, but as someone whose presence mattered. He looked at her carefully. I cannot repay what you have done. Maria lowered her gaze. I was just doing what felt right. No, he replied. You gave my daughter something I could not. You gave her back to me. There was a long pause. The air felt heavy, like something unspoken hung between them. I do not want you working here as a maid anymore, he said. Maria blinked. I want you to stay, he continued, but not as a staff, as her guide, her mentor, her friend, full-time. Name your salary. I do not care what it takes. Maria's eyes welled up, but she kept her composure. Only if I get to decide when she needs music, and when she just needs to play. He smiled. Deal. From that day forward, things changed. Emily had music sessions every morning, sometimes structured, sometimes not. The music room became the heart of the house. She still did not speak much, but that did not matter. The moments she did were filled with weight, with emotion, with meaning. Some words came easier: mama, song, light, cold. Others took time, but each one felt like a spark. Maria introduced Emily to new sounds: flutes, soft drums, wind chimes. She let her explore with touch and ear, teaching her that music was not just notes and keys. It was emotion made real. Mr. Grant, once a ghost in his own home, began spending more time downstairs. Sometimes he watched from the doorway. Other times he joined, sitting quietly beside his daughter as she hummed or tapped along with a rhythm. At night, the mansion felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Then, one spring afternoon, a decision was made. They would hold a small concert. Not for press, not for reputation, just for a handful of people. Close family, the mansion staff, a few friends. A simple wooden stage was set up in the sunlit garden. Flowers bloomed. Wind whispered softly. Emily wore a pale blue dress. Her hair was brushed gently back, a small silver clip glinting under the light. She looked both nervous and brave. Maria knelt beside her before the performance. You do not have to be loud, just honest. Emily nodded. When it was her turn, she walked onto the stage. She stood there, hands lightly clasped. The room, or rather, the garden, fell silent. Maria sat at the piano behind her, playing a slow, familiar melody. Emily took a breath, and then she sang, not a full song, just a short, soft melody, half hummed, half whispered. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied, like a bird learning to fly for the first time. She missed a note, then found the next. Her eyes searched the crowd until they locked onto her father's. He smiled, one hand pressed over his heart. When she finished, no one clapped at first. There was just silence. Then Maria stood and clapped once. The rest followed. It was not the kind of applause meant for the show. It was the kind meant for miracles. Later that evening, as the guests left and lanterns lit the garden paths, Mr. Grant walked over to Maria. Emily was asleep in her arms, exhausted but peaceful. He looked at them, at his daughter's small hand resting on Maria's wrist, and said quietly, "You gave me my daughter back." Maria did not reply. She only smiled. The lights dimmed, the night deepened. But inside the mansion, music still played, soft, full of hope, and endless in meaning. Sometimes the most powerful voices come from the quietest hearts. And sometimes healing does not come from medicine, but from music, love, and a little human connection. If this story touched you, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to believe that even silence can sing.